Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, Vet. Hi, Deb. Good evening, everyone. We're going to wait just about another minute or so and allow folks to just join us.
Okay.
Regina, you must be exhausted.
I am very much so exhausted.
I bet you are.
Just so you all know, when I'm tired, I stutter. So I'll be doing my very best to get through this evening as coherently as possible.
No problem. We understand.
Yeah, we appreciate that work you were doing on the state level.
Thank you. Thank you.
Regina,
Yes, ma'am.
was it today that the hearing was today?
It was at 2:30. It went pretty okay.
Okay.
The first presenter went a little over time, and so then they told everybody now you only have 6 minutes, go. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was wondering why they changed it from 8.
At first it was supposed to be 10, then it went to 8, then it went to 6.
Wow. So is it tomorrow as well?
Tomorrow is when they hear from individuals. So today was hearing from municipalities and units of government, and tomorrow is individuals.
Oh. Okay. And tomorrow it starts at 9 or later?
That I don't know. I think it does start in the morning time because they go all day. Those hearings are all day. My part on the agenda was just supposed to be the 2:30 to 3:30 time frame.
I see. Okay.
A lot of people show up.
I didn't go in person, so, and then they didn't turn the camera on in the gallery. It sounded like from the applause when people finished that there were quite a few people there.
Mhm.
All right, everybody. It looks like it's 6:05. So we're going to go ahead and get started just to make the most out of our time. So yes, if you do have cameras available, you can turn them on. Or if you are eating dinner, completely understandable. Please feel free to eat your dinner. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to give an overview of the agenda, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. So welcome everybody, our Russell City Steering Committee. My name is Tiffany Hong. I am your facilitator for today and also for your next meeting. And for today's agenda, thank you all for providing input into the agenda. The first topic we're going to be discussing is we're just going to do a brief welcome. We have we have Jenny Chacon and also Regina from the city of Hayward, as you all have become familiar with. And we also have 2 folks from the city attorney's office as well, as they're going to be providing some additional information about the project scope in the next section. So I believe that's Michael and also Sangeetha, who I see on the call here. From there, we are going to do some question and answer about the project scope and some of the information that Regina sent out regarding the project goals, the phases, the budget, and the role of the steering committee, in addition to the role of the city. We'll talk about voting and a quorum, sharing back the results from the surveys that were sent out, having some follow-up discussion and agreement on those. We'll talk about committee roles. Hopefully there will be time for this. If not, we can move it to the next agenda item, but there were some really good tangibles in the survey responses. So we'll discuss that. Elephants in the room is also an agenda item. I know there's a lot of different perspectives of whether we should discuss this or not. At the minimum, we're just going to acknowledge it. And if you all feel like it is important to discuss, we'll hand that over to you all to discuss, or it could be put into a parking lot for a follow-up agenda item, either at the next meeting or in some of your future meetings that may not be facilitated by me or the city, but on your own. And then we'll summarize with some next steps, kind of brainstorm some of the topics that we should be covering in your next meeting, and also discuss some potential meeting dates that we can send out in a poll as well. All right. Any questions about the agenda before we get started?
I'm wondering, Tiffany, if we can at some point, it doesn't have to be tonight, take the time out to actually calendar out our meetings for the next quarter, three months to 6 months, so that we have it set and we don't have to take the time for the meeting to, go back and forth and decide on meeting dates. It'll be out there. If you can make it, great. If not, and people can adjust their calendars, and it's just set, and we decide together. Is that something that is possible to do at some point? Or I don't know how the group feels about that, but my suggestion.
Yeah, I think that was a suggestion by a few other folks too. I'm going to put it in our parking lot, so I'll put it at the end of these slides, but I know I'm only facilitating 2 more meetings with you all. So, but that could be part of the process in setting those dates. But yeah, I'm sure people would appreciate having these calendared out. So yeah, I'll put that in the parking lot of something to discuss. Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay, question. You said 2 more meetings. What's happening?
Yeah, so I'm only contracted with the city to facilitate 3 total meetings for the steering committee. And after that, the idea is that you all take it on your own to kind of facilitate your own meetings. And go ahead, Regina.
Yeah, so yes, you will be running your own meetings, setting your own meeting times, but the city is going to provide you with a project manager resource, right, of your own choosing to take you further, right? And I think I referenced this in one of the first emails after last week's session. And Jenny is going to be providing you all with some technical assistance to draft an RFP to identify a facilitator of your own choosing. I don't want to take up too much time here, but we can get more into that, I think, in number 2 on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. And then with that, for speaking protocols moving forward, we'll talk about that next. But Jenny, do you want to start with roll call before we go any further?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Chacon, Equity and Inclusion Officer for the City of Hayward. I am going to take roll. I also wanted to introduce as well, a reminder, Michael Lawson, another city partner, is our city attorney's office for this project, and also Sanjita Walt, who also works with Michael at the city attorney's office. So you'll see them periodically here. Hi, they're here to support, like me and Regina, to support you in this process and kind of give you an overview of this process and resources you will need, or any technical support.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I am going to take roll right now and just, state here or not. Okay, and I'm going off of the roster on the City of Hayward website. So this is not in any particular order, nothing particular, just what's on the roster here. Gloria Moore. Present? No? Okay. Aisha Knowles.
Here.
All right. Michael V. Johnson.
Present.
Ayana Knowles.
Here.
Deborah Harris,
Here.
Marion Johnson. Okay, not here, okay. Elizabeth Sanchez.
Here.
Tony Nguyen. Okay, Tony's absent.
Jenny?
Carolyn, oh, Tony, you're here?
No, Jenny, Marion Johnson's actually here.
Okay. So just make sure to turn on your microphone when I say, yeah, so I can say present. Okay, Tony Nguyen. Tony Nguyen, okay. Absent. Carolyn Johnson. Is Carolyn Johnson present? Okay. Michael D.
Can't
Johnson.
get back in your microphone.
Michael D. Johnson or no? And then Rebecca Hill Long.
Here.
Okay. And then the alternates, Yvette sorry if I get your last name right, Hippolyte?
No, Hippolyte.
Hippolyte. Okay, thank you for
Uh-huh.
correcting me. And Cindy Torres. Okay, those were our alternates. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So before we move on, oh, Marion?
Just want to make sure I had been bounced out, so I'm here.
Got you. Thank you. All right. So just before we get started with our project scope, just want to remind everybody to use the raise hand button if you do want to speak or ask a question, just so we can make sure to respect people if they are raising their hand and they've been waiting to speak, that we can call on them. If you are calling in and you don't have the raise hand button, you can just briefly unmute yourself and say, I want to add to the, I'd like to raise my hand so I can keep track and then I can call on you. Or you can even put in the chat, I'd like to raise my hand that way. Otherwise, we also have our team agreements that you all brainstormed and just want you all to keep these in mind as we move forward. I know that there's a suggestion or a request to consolidate these, but I think I'm going to put that into the parking lot as well. Aisha?
May I please request that the city staff members identify themselves as city staff members, and if possible, since if their cameras are off, that they leave their cameras on, just so, if you see us, it would be helpful to see the city staff members during these processes when we're having these discussions, just to create a trusting environment. That would be appreciated.
Aisha, how would you like them to identify? Do you want it in the name?
In their name, just maybe a comma and City of Hayward, or if you're from the city attorney's office or whoever you're representing, just for those people who are not, who will be watching this later as these are, since this is being recorded, just so that we all have an understanding that you're either a steering committee member or representative of the City of Hayward. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. Michael, Sanjita, is that feasible for you to keep your cameras on while you're here?
Sure, I can keep my camera on. I'm Sangeetha. I'm with the city attorney's office, and I'm mostly just observing today.
Thank you. All right. And I can change their names and put City of Hayward, City Attorney's Office in there. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Regina. I know there's a lot of information that was sent over to you all. If there is anything that you want to add, Regina, or City Attorney's Office, Michael or Sanjita, feel free to add that now, and then we can open it up for follow-up questions or discussions.
Yeah, I don't want to take up too much time in the meeting. Sent out a couple of communications, and hopefully you all had an opportunity to read those. They kind of articulate where we are in the process. They answered some of the questions that you had in the previous meeting about the process. and it outlined how we intend to move forward. I think the most important part of it, as Tiffany was saying before, she's only contracted to do 2 more meetings. Her goal was to help you to design your governing structure, and we're getting to the end of that. And what we want to do is to provide you with the financial resources to identify your own facilitator. And as I mentioned in that larger communication that came out, your facilitator won't be kind of facilitating kind of the way that Tiffany's facilitating. The person that you're looking for is someone that's probably going to be a more of a project manager that keeps you on task, helps you with your deadlines, and helps you to move your recommendations forward. And you can build into that RFP all that you think is reasonable to support you in moving this work forward. Jenny Chacon will be your resource from the city to help draft that RFP. She's going to take a first pass at something to give you so that you're not starting from that blank page, because sometimes that's hard to do. And also the city has its own structure for how RFPs have to be written with a lot of boilerplate information. So Jenny's going to take a first pass at that, but then you all will help to flesh out the full scope of work. A lot of things that you've been saying that, hey, I think you need this person to do minutes, or we think we need somebody to do, communications, or whatever it is that you think you want this person to do. We build it into the scope of work. But just be concerned, the more you put into a scope of work, the more it's probably going to cost. But I think that you should build out in that scope of work what you think you really are going to need to support you through this work. And we've talked a little bit about needing a timeline. That scope of work is going to have to include a timeline to complete the work so that you can alert the facilitator or whoever that project manager is going to be, like when deliverables are going to need to be due. And so a lot of that work is still ahead, but that work will not be facilitated with Tiffany. That'll be working with Jenny to build out that statement of work for the RFP. And then once you identify a qualified project manager, facilitator, using those words interchangeably, you'll be meeting with them to move the project forward. So just any questions that you have about what I've said, that information, or other information that was sent. Looks like Michael has his hand up.
Hello, Michael. And Jenny, it looks like Tony is here. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so question. I understand the need for scope of work. And I've read the timelines that you have put for this project. My question is, it's my understanding that the researchers that you all selected to do the research were selected without a requirement or an issuance of an RFP, and that they were selected sole source. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I guess my question is help me understand, is an RFP for us to select an individual required? And if so, why? And if there are any rules or policies that come from the city that suggest what the correct process for procuring resources are?
I'd like to ask if the city attorney could assist in answering that question. Part of what we're trying to make sure that we do here is to set you all up for success in your recommendations and create a process that is able to be withstanding of challenges. Finding individuals who do this work, they are out there. My recommendation would be to do a request for proposal. You do a sole source when you know individuals who are already engaged in the work and has a relationship with the organization. And I hope that you had an opportunity to read the bios of the researchers that have been chosen. They're immensely and eminently qualified. I just want to make sure that you find the same quality in a project manager for yourselves. Michael?
Yeah, if I can continue. So I actually looked at the contract that you sent and have some serious concerns with that contract. The first one is the characterization that the individuals that you have selected are in fact experts in their field. When I go back and I look at the person who signed the contract, and I look at his field of expertise, his expertise has absolutely nothing to do with reparative or restorative justice. In fact, if you look at the online at the website, you will find that their work is in the field of juvenile delinquents and juvenile justice, having nothing at all to do with reparative and restorative justice, which I believe is the work that we're being charged to do. That's number one. So to characterize them as someone who are experts in the field, I don't think that we're working on juvenile justice. They all work from San Francisco State. One of the guys who actually is listed, George, is actually on sabbatical at the University of Oregon right now. And so all of those things for me just concerns me around sourcing someone. And in particular, when you look at the deliverable, if we were to read that deliverable right now, it is very unclear as to what it is that they actually have to deliver, because the sentence isn't even complete in what the deliverable is for the contract.
So Michael, I appreciate the points that you're raising. These individuals are not intended to be experts in reparative or restorative justice. They are researchers, and they are expert researchers in genealogy and the intersection between race, policy, and crime. And they just happen to be a part of the criminal justice department, but that is where that work is done in San Francisco State. The facilitator that you all will be picking is someone that should be well-versed in the role of restorative justice, because they will be helping you to craft your recommendations. These individuals from San Francisco State, regardless of who's on sabbatical someplace else presently, they are helping to build the record. They're going to the county, they're pulling deeds, they're pulling assessments. They are qualified to do that work. They do it often in their research and their role as researchers. We are not here to litigate the researcher's statement of work or that contract. So I'd like to suggest that we put that on the parking lot going forward. And if you have any questions about the RFP process that you need to engage in, then I'm happy to answer those, and also to allow the city attorney to speak about process going forward for the RFP.
So final question, is it a requirement of the steering committee to issue an RFP to secure our project manager?
We are recommending that. And so Michael Lawson, if you can speak to requirements, that would be helpful.
Greetings, everybody. Michael Lawson, city attorney. An RFP with a preferred scope of work for the steering committee's mission is recommended. I would hope that the steering committee can help in designing what those deliverables look like. I can share with you, at least when I get to my part of the presentation, that we've looked at the work around this topic in Oakland, San Francisco, Evanston, Illinois, Asheville, North Carolina, Bruce's Beach in Los Angeles County. So we have some sense of who's done what, where, locally, nationally. So I think city staff is well positioned to help the steering committee in designing what the RFP and what those deliverables could look like. I hope that's helpful.
I think the question, Michael, is the steering committee required to put out an RFP, or could they sole source it if they wanted to? And what I'm hearing you say is that the city is recommending that the steering committee put out an RFP, but is it required if they decide they don't want to?
What you'll hear in my presentation is that the steering committee's work is going to be closely scrutinized by external groups looking for ways to challenge the recommendations by using methods that would be less likely to be challenged, such as an open RFP, is likely to make the recommendations more sound and less likely to be challenged. And I can speak to that a little bit later. If it were sole sourced, I think my concern would be is that there would not be any personal or professional connections to whomever might be selected. So I'm not saying that that can't be done. I just think that would have to be well vetted to ensure that somewhere down the line that it's not challenged by an external group, which I'll talk about when I get to my piece.
I have a question.
Oh, hold on a second. Let's see. Go ahead, Yvette, and then I think Rebecca had her hand up. And then we may want to get to Michael Lawson's part because maybe there's answers he has there.
Gotcha. Question. Given those very same things that Mr. Lawson said, given that the initial sole source was not RFP, won't it be faced with those same challenges?
My office was brought into this about 30 days ago, 60 days ago. I wasn't involved in the initial design of the project scope. I think your question is fair. The criticism, I think, is valid. My group has met with the researchers to understand their scope of work. And I understand that it involves pulling records from the county, deeds, transfers, perhaps offers and contracts of sale from the 1950s and 60s. I would hope that much of that material or those records could come from the county. But I think pulling those records, and I understand that there might be somewhere in the range of maybe 800 deeds that might be in play. So having that information, possibly having to do title searches might also be useful. I don't think that that goes to the subject matter expertise of where the commission or where the steering committee wants to go. But I think having that kind of data would be useful. I think that also goes to some of the issues around the generational gap.
Clarify for me.
Sure. The owners and residents in the 50s and 60s are probably not in this group meeting tonight.
Right.
Those of you who are descendants, maybe 2-3 generations removed. So having that data, having original owners, having original business owners, land owners, could be useful data. Right. I think that's the mission of the researchers. It's not to make qualitative analysis of what your recommendations might look like. That's my understanding of what the researchers are engaged to do.
And that is correct. And I appreciate you saying that more eloquently than I, Attorney Lawson.
Thank you, Regina. Does that answer your question, Yvette?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Thank
And
you.
it's sounding like if there are concerns that you all have about the researchers and their qualifications, I think that might be something that you take on to discuss how you want to move forward with them.
Yeah, and you will be meeting with them. You will be meeting with them.
Okay, thank you, Yvette. And then
You're welcome.
next, Rebecca, you want to withdraw your question, Marion, and then Deborah.
Yes, I have a question in terms of, from what I've heard so far, and I don't want to make an assumption about what I think I'm hearing. But the language that I'm hearing is that the researchers are going to be pulling information from county and other places in order to get details about what took place. And maybe I heard wrong earlier in earlier conversations that the researchers have already done 4 months worth of work. So how do we find out what they've done in 4 months if they haven't already done that? What have they done if they in fact have been working for 4 months already?
They've been doing a
Because
lot
that
of
should have been done.
they've been doing a lot of what Attorney Lawson said. They've been pulling deeds and records. That's all that they've been doing. And so then they are holding now so that they can share that information with you once you are fully formed as a steering committee with your governing structure intact, right? So they're waiting because a part of their research is getting information, your stories, you telling them additional questions that you want them to run down, helping to make sure that they haven't missed anything. And then they go back with that additional scope of work that you have given them, and they will have 4 more months of research as a part of the contract that we've engaged them for or in.
But it sounds like they're going to be meeting with you all to present to you all what they have researched and discovered so far.
Because from what I understand, we are already formed. We're just going to be getting roles in place. So getting those details to us about what they've done so far shouldn't be held back in any further. You know, we're all here. We all need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
The
We're
more
trying to wait.
transparency that, no, I'm not finished.
I'm
The more
sorry.
transparency that we have, then the better we're able to have a good discussion about
Yeah.
what we're actually trying to do to restore and repair this community. Thank you.
I apologize for speaking up. I'd like to ask if we can turn the temperature down a little bit and just understand that we're in this with you together to try to make sure that you are successful in your recommendations. We're simply trying to wait until we get through these next scheduled meetings that we have engaged with Tiffany so that we know where we're going. But the researchers are ready and willing to meet with you all if we can just get through these next couple of meetings.
Yeah. And if it's helpful for you all to get that presentation before we resume these meetings about structure, that's definitely a possibility too. Let's go to Deborah next, and then I want to turn it over to Michael Lawson for his presentation, just in case, and then we can open it back to questions, just in case he has answers for us. Deborah.
My question is, if we have to do a RFP to get someone to chair our meetings, then that means the city of Hayward will decide whether or not they accept or deny the RFP.
I think that's incorrect, Deborah, because the chair, you might select your own chair internally, like somebody here might be your chair, but the RFP is for somebody to kind of help manage the project and things like that and help kind of on the logistical end of the work.
But we have to submit an RFP for someone to be a facilitator, correct?
It's recommended, but you're not required to, but in order to.
It's not etched in granite. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right, let's go to Michael Lawson if you're ready.
Thank you. I'm backgrounded by 2 dogs who are anxious to participate. So
I think they want to present with you.
before I get started, I want to share with you that from my perspective, it's important that Alameda County participate as a partner in this process. There was a presentation today to the state legislature's commission. I believe that Supervisor Miley participated and indicated that the county is collaborating with the city in this journey. I need to see the county step up and show and demonstrate how they're going to partner in this process. I say that because in the 50s and 60s, Russell City was unincorporated Alameda County territory. in what was called urban renewal law, which eventually became redevelopment agency law, Alameda County used that law to acquire property, take property, whether it was purchased at fair market value as part of the history that the researchers are looking at. Russell City was annexed to the city of Hayward in the mid-60s. So although Hayward might have been a willing observer, it was Alameda County that used the law at the time to actually acquire the Russell City land. So let me just share, I come with you with a couple of narratives. Like many of your ancestors, your folks, my folks came from the South, Louisiana, Arkansas, during World War II to work in the war industry. The shipyards in Richmond, the shipyards in Vallejo, Mare Island, San Francisco, Bayview, Hunters Point. I also have my aunt and my cousins were redlined onto Kelly Hill when they tried to buy property in Hayward. So I share the narrative that many of you have as to why you're here. Russell City, I believe, predated the World War II war industry, but it certainly was heavily populated by folks who came from the South during World War II. But I'm also a lawyer, and I come to you as a city attorney with another perspective. And so I wanted to share a few things about the challenges and the opportunities from the legal perspective. And by the way, the city staff on this call, as well as a couple of other attorneys in my office, took a tour of the Russell City neighborhood, or what was originally the Russell City neighborhood, about a week and a half ago. And I would just, and if you haven't been there, I would describe it as generally at the corner of Hesperian and West Winton. There is now a Toys R Us. I think it's vacant now, but there's a big Toys R Us at the corner. And I believe the Eden mobile home park is right behind the Toys R Us. That's generally where Russell City was. And it extends west down to the railroad tracks and not west, yes, west. And then south to, I can't think of the other street at the moment. All of the Russell City streets are gone. What is in Russell City now are commercial along Hesperian. There is residential, new residential, older residential, and heavy industrial. You wouldn't recognize Russell City as it was configured in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and into the mid 60s. It was rezoned to what it is now. So it looks entirely different from many of the images that have been shared historically about what Russell City looked like. And it's very significant because the land has all been sold, transferred, redeveloped, and the city and the county do not own parcels. To the extent that there is open space and there is a park, I believe the park is operated by the Hayward Area Recreation District.
Michael, I think you froze.
While he's frozen, I'll just correct that that's the East Bay Regional Park District area, not hard.
In the meantime, I'm getting some feedback that this might be taking some time. Regina, do you know kind of the key points of Michael's presentation?
Yes, and Sangeeta, if you want to chime in, I think I'd appreciate her kind of talking to it from the legal perspective. Kind of like the guardrails we talked about, the different categories of recommendations.
Yeah, I can jump in. I know he had it well planned out though. So can we give him maybe another minute or so,
Or if he doesn't pop back in, can we move to the next thing on the agenda and then come back to this? Or I just want to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time and that we get some more things accomplished.
I agree. Thank you, Regina. Yeah, everybody. Is that okay with everybody to move on to the next agenda item, which is around voting protocols?
Yes, I'm okay with it.
Okay.
and if he continues to have issues, we can come back and I can try to jump in. I just know that he prepared this tonight, so I want to give him that chance.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, everybody. In the meantime, are there any other questions about project scope in general? I'm not sure where Michael was going next, but project scope and things like that.
I get it.
Okay. All right, so next piece on the agenda then is around voting and quorum. So in terms of how decisions will be made as a steering committee. So Regina had sent out that poll around whether we should have a majority vote on the committee, whether we should have 2/3 vote or consensus. So 50% of people, which was, we got 6 responses because everybody responded to the survey, said that decisions should be made using a majority vote, which means whichever option receives the most votes. So these are the results. I want to open it up for some conversation. Are there any questions or comments about majority vote? Is everyone good to move forward with a majority vote?
Yeah, we can move forward.
Yes.
Yes. Michael, yes. Elizabeth, go ahead. You have your hand up.
It looks like if everybody voted, then how come there's not 13 votes? 13 responses.
Great question. Let me make sure I answer the question correctly. It looks like there was one skip response.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make sure that, because you said everybody responded, so it didn't add up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one person skipped. So yes, 12 responded to this question and it was skipped by one person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then to your question, Rebecca, we didn't skip the project overview part. We just actually had it, which was just kind of because there is some feedback on the agenda that we don't need to go over it since all of the materials were sent out. So really, we just kind of, Regina spoke to it in terms of project scope with research phases, my meetings with all of you, and we open it up for questions.
Okay, so I guess I must have missed something. Does this work sunset at some point? Apparently there's a timeline someplace in print that I don't think I received. Is there a written timeline?
There is not. I think we talked about that at the last meeting, that the only timeline that currently is in place is related to the scope of work of the researchers. And I mentioned timeline again today, saying that you all will help to create the timeline and when this work sunsets, because that'll be a part of the scope of work of your RFP. If you do decide, which we highly recommend, that you move forward with an RFP process to find your own facilitator / project manager.
In the case that we're not done within the 22-23 budget year, just saying, is there some projection for funding beyond this budget you sent?
Yes. That not a projection, but there is a capability of tapping into funding beyond what we have currently today. This work does not need to align itself with the budget cycle.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
Okay.
We have flexibility to appropriate other funds mid-year if necessary for this work.
Okay, well, that's pretty important to know. Good, thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay. Hi, Michael, welcome back. Let me know if you're ready, but I know we're over time in the agenda. So if you would mind just kind of like giving us the high level summary of some of the challenges you were starting to speak about.
Thank you. Apologies. As I said, there are likely to be challenges, external challenges from groups who disagree with the council having created the steering committee or the possible recommendations that might fall into different categories. There might be legal challenges that might arise from conservative law firms, which has happened in some of the other areas that have sort of appropriated different kinds of reparative justice programs. So I've, with my team and talking to Regina and Jenny, I'm going to put the opportunities and challenges into 3 groups. So imagine a green light, yellow light, and red light at an intersection. The green light are the concepts and opportunities that I think, which have been done in some other communities around restorative and reparative justice, that are less likely to be legally challenged. They involve, for example, creating historic districts, designating former areas as historic. That's one concept. The other is installing monuments and signs, directional signs, to the community. Oakland recently entered into an easement with an indigenous group, I think it's the local Ohlone tribe, that created a meeting space. They did not convey land, rather they conveyed an easement in an existing public park. And an easement is a right to entry. It's not ownership, but it gives the Ohlone tribe, the indigenous group, the right to meet at a designated spot in Oakland. So that's a green light kind of a concept. And I'm using that term loosely within the legal sense that these are fairly easy things to accomplish, and they're less likely to be challenged. So let's talk about the yellow light. These are the areas that some communities have done, and there are challenges. First-time homebuyer programs for descendants of Russell City, scholarship programs for descendants of Russell City, funds that can be appropriated from the general fund or special funds that go into those categories of possible expenditures. I would describe those as realistic. I can see challenges. I think the challenge for Russell City is that the Russell City discussion, the Russell City journey is not the same discussion as slavery and reparations, which is going on with the state legislature, maybe Bruce's Beach in Southern California, some of the discussions in Evanston, Illinois, and Asheville. What I would say is when Asheville adopted its scholarship program, specifically for descendants of slaves, it was challenged, and that program had to be sort of reconfigured so that it was broader and less exclusive, if you will. But let's talk about the red light, the kinds of concepts that are likely to be challenged, and they involve financial grants to descendants of Russell City, land transfers, either land within the Russell City community as it was configured, or other sites perhaps in Hayward or a land that Hayward might own outside of the incorporated limits of the city. There would likely be challenges for distribution of funds from the general fund or other special funds. And that's likely to revolve around the issue of whether descendants have standing. By that, I mean this group, the steering committee, the larger Russell City, the 150 or so folks who have signed up to follow this narrative. You all likely didn't own property in the 50s and 60s. Your folks probably did. Grandparents, uncles, parents. But the issue for this group in the larger community is that the land wasn't taken from you directly. And that makes it more easily challengeable if there were grants or efforts to restore land or repatriate land. I'm not saying that it can't happen. I'm only saying that it could get tied up in litigation. And so I think we want to be mindful of what the opportunities and what the risks are. I don't believe that the city council will want to support recommendations that will tie the city up in litigation for years and years and years. I would hope that the steering committee and the recommendations give the opportunity to act directly and promptly when your recommendations get to the council. And just a footnote, I heard earlier about the desire to put some time to this discussion. I think there is energy. I think there is momentum. And I would hope that the work can be done in a way that aligns with the council's fiscal 24 budget cycle, which is going to be in the April and May timeframe. So that's, roughly 3 or 4 months. Now I know that Regina has said that, there isn't a problem with carrying over funds. But I think you all want to strike while the iron is hot, so to speak. Particularly if this group can stay focused. This group, the steering committee, can stay focused. Meet regularly for the next few months. Design recommendations that are likely to get the council's attention, and try and meet the real goal of the mission. So, so those are just some of my thoughts. I put them. These are not constraints. I think they're realistic ways to sort of do the work, understanding that it will be scrutinized and it may be challenged. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for your thoughts on challenges, not quite constraints, but some thoughts for the group to keep in mind as they move forward with the objective. And I'm sure many of us are feeling like, wow, this is not at all, this is not an easy thing that you all are going to have to do together, which is why I think the structure in which we're creating around voting and quorum and chair and all these things and roles are going to be really important. Yeah, and if anybody has questions about anything that Michael shared, please feel free to put it in the chat. We can put it in the parking lot just so we can go back to the next agenda item. Thank you, Michael. All right, everybody. Everybody okay to move back into the next part of the agenda?
We can, but my question is just kind of too long to sit down and type it out, but it's very quick if I just say it. Mr. Lawson, I noticed that there still hasn't been a meeting of the minds between the city and the county, and a clear definition as to whose role is what, or how you're going to work together collectively. How close to getting to that point do you feel you are?
I'm going to defer to Regina.
So I feel as though the county is really just ramping up to explore the question of Russell City. Right now, they are leaning heavily on saying, hey, we are meeting with the city because the city's doing something. But they have gotten approved 2 positions in their budget to focus on equity and inclusion. In part, that will be this Russell City work. So I think some of it has been not a lack of will, but a lack of capacity to take on the project from their side. So they've been keeping tabs on what we're doing. I met with them yesterday, actually, to provide them with an update. They have offered support, but they have not yet articulated clearly what that support looks like and what that means, right? But they have committed that they want to work with us. I've asked the question, I have not received an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Yvette. Let's go to Michael and then Marion.
So first I want to thank the city attorney, Michael Lawson's walkthrough of the various categories, green light, yellow light, and red light, right? And his caution for us to remain focused on the mission as stated. And part of that, just kind of responding to that is the statement of what it is that we have been called to do in terms of the work that we're supposed to be doing. And one of the things that I just wanted to make sure that I was on the same page was when I look at the project summary on the website, it says that the work that we've been called to do is to determine appropriate restitution for the city of Hayward's involvement in inequitable treatment and the forced relocation of Russell City community members. Now, as you outlined in your red light, green light, yellow light scenario, the appropriate restitution for City of Hayward's involvement would squarely place our area of responsibility and focus into what you deemed or referenced as the red light zone. Restitution being financial implications. The second thing that I wanted to just point out is you made or you alluded to the fact that somehow that Hayward played no significant role in the procurement of the land and the decision-making about moving forward with the project. What I'd like to do is, I would like to direct your attention to an article that was printed in the Oakland Tribune on October 14th of 1961, which is called Russell City Plan Wrapped. You can look that up for your own reference. But in that article, it describes the Alameda County Conference of Mayors voting by a 9-1 margin against this Russell City plan that was ultimately implemented. And to be clear, it says in the article that the only negative vote was cast by the Vice Mayor, Vernon C. Blackfield of Hayward. He was the only representative of the 10 representatives on this mayor's conference in the county of Alameda that actually voted to move forward with the Russell City plan proposed by Alameda County. So to suggest that there was no role or there was not a desire by the city of Hayward to move forward with the project, they were the only one of 10 representatives that wanted to do so. So I just wanted to make sure that we were clear about the involvement, the desire, and the role that Hayward played in wanting to move forward. And then finally, this is my last point, is my only concern about the RFP, just so we're clear, is Tiffany's point where she says that she only has 2 meetings for which she has to support us as a consultant. She has 2 meetings left. And in my review of what it takes to get an RFP done in the city of Hayward, from the other ones that I can see on your website, it's generally a 1 to 3 month process to go from creation of the RFP to actually getting it executed. And so there seems to be a mismatch between the amount of time that we have with Tiffany to support us in the work and what it will take for us to get someone in place to replace her in that role if we follow a RFP process. That was the only other thing I wanted to point out. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for clarifying some of the things. And I think to City Attorney Michael Lawson's point, I think he was just trying to highlight some of the things that have been successful and others that are challenging, not to steer you in any type of direction, but just to kind of set it up. And also, I think in what you mentioned about like the city's role, I don't think the city would be here if it didn't have the desire to repair the harm, right? And like setting out the resources and setting up this steering committee, that I don't think they would be here if they didn't feel some sort of responsibility. So thank you for pointing out that article. And in regards to what you said about role, I don't think it's so much a mismatch, because I think my role was to support with setting up the steering committee, and Jenny is going to be your resource because she knows the RFP process. So she'll be guiding that in between kind of setting up the logistical end into finding a project manager. Michael Lawson.
I think the observations that Michael made and the reference to the newspaper article from 1961 are critical to the discussion, because there's no question that the city of Hayward looked on approvingly as the county acquired the land and forced the residents to move elsewhere. And in trying to move elsewhere, the city redlined much of Hayward to prevent those Russell City residents from actually living within the incorporated limits of Hayward, as my own family as an example. Regarding the RFP, I'm committed to have my office make sure that that happens as quickly as possible, pulling together the RFP and getting it out. It is true that sometimes the more complex RFPs might take a couple months. I don't see this as being complex, and I think we can get it done quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael Lawson. Thank you, Michael V. Johnson. All right. All right, everybody. Are we ready to move on for the voting protocols? Just to finalize that. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know talking about all of these things requires questions and clarification. So we'll just go around the room just to make sure everyone is good to move forward with a majority vote and moving forward with decisions. Regina, do you ever?
Oh, I think we already solidified that one. I was going to say, just move on to the next one.
Okay, everybody good with this? You can give me a thumbs up in your camera. All righty, thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so on to the next part then, quorum. So quorum is as we talked about, the minimum amount of people that has to be present at a meeting in order for a vote to take place. So if we said that there's going to be a majority vote, in terms of voting, and in the survey quorum, we said quorum be 9 people, 8 people, 7 people. So there's 11 members and then 2 alternates. And in their original full Russell City community town hall meetings, that's where we talked about how many people should be on this steering committee. And then it was decided that there should be 11 people plus 2 alternates, right? And the alternates are not voting members, but if members who are on the steering committee aren't there, they would step in for whatever reason, if they had to drop out or there was like a significant life event that they can no longer serve on the committee, that's when this alternates would step in. So in terms of quorum, about 6 people voted for 7 people to be the quorum. So I just want to clarify, if we have a quorum that's 7, that means the majority vote that would be needed would be 4. So would this be okay for people? If the quorum is 7 people and we need to make a vote, so that means only 4 people would be needed in order to move something forward and be decided on. People have thoughts about that? Does that sound okay? Does that mean maybe you want to increase the quorum?
Yeah, I have thoughts about that. Maybe we should ask everybody if we should increase the quorum.
Mm-hmm.
4 people seems too few.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Are you saying 4 people will be a quorum?
I'm saying
that what-
7 people, no, 7 people would be the quorum, but if at that meeting, those 7 people had to vote on something and the majority and the voting process is, it has to have a majority vote, that means 4 people would be needed to pass something. So that might it might sound like too little, like, oh, only 4 people made a vote on a decision that has 11 people on the committee. Does that make sense, Deborah?
No, it doesn't. I think it needs, well, I understand what you're saying, but
Yes.
I think it would need to be more than 4 people.
Okay, yeah, that's what we're asking. Should it be more
Yeah.
people? Mhm.
Yes.
And maybe the vote shouldn't take place until you have 11.
That's possible too. Yeah, so maybe the quorum isn't even 9, maybe it's 11. Michael Johnson.
Yeah, so how many people are in attendance today?
Today there are 14 minus 4, that's 10.
Yeah, 10.
There are only 13 members total. Is it 14 or is it 13, Mike?
It's
13.
Yeah, 13.
And
And 11 are voting members.
Right. So my thoughts here was, if you look at it from a simple majority of a group of 11, then a simple majority in the group of 11, if they were all present, would only be 6 to begin with. Right? We've already decided that it's going to be a simple majority. That's 6. I don't think there needs to be 6 votes for us to move forward. If the quorum is less, I don't think it needs to be the same number as it would be if there was full attendance. So if it's 6 for 11, correct?
Mhm.
Then if the quorum is 9, if we were to say that the quorum was 9, right, then the simple majority would still be only 5, not 6. It would never be a situation that would be more than 6. So the reality is, if the quorum was 9 and a majority of that quorum is 5, then it's either 4 or 5. It would never be more than 6 anyway. So
Unless it was 10, right? If it was 10 people, would it be 6? It would be 6.
If we said that a vote can't be held with less than 10, okay, then you can figure what 6 at that particular point would be majority. But I don't think we should be voting with less than 10.
could we
That's
just
exactly the question, right? The quorum is how many is needed for a vote. So maybe
Right.
we want a quorum of 10.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm proposing, so that it would be 6. And no vote would take place with less than 10. I mean, with less than 10 present.
So
Johnson.
So that being said, since we've already decided on what a majority is of the voting members, then let's have the voting members decide and vote, because we've already established what a majority is for the committee.
Now, let me make sure I'm hearing this. There needs to be 10
So
voting.
there's been a proposal to put 10 as the quorum.
Right, but I think here there's only 9 voting members today, because Yvette is an alternate.
I'm an alternate, and so I would have to vote as a part of the 10.
Right.
which is exactly my point, that it's, the reality is that this is a classic example of why a quorum doesn't need to be that high. Today is a classic example why having such a high bar to reach for a quorum gets in the way of us moving the work forward. And which is why most people here had already said that they wanted it to be 7.
All right, thank you, Michael. Yeah, other thoughts, just to make sure we're all on the same page and we can.
I have a question.
Rebecca?
Yeah, when would alternates be eligible to vote?
Alternates would be eligible to vote per the larger community, what was discussed. If, let's say, somebody, well, knock on wood, had to face an unexpected death, if they had other life events going on and they thought, you know, no, I really wanted to be a part of this, but I no longer have the capacity and I need to step back from the committee, that's when an alternate would step in to take their place.
So sort of a permanent step down. It wouldn't be a situation where an alternate is present at a meeting and there's a vote that needs to take place, and a full voting member is not present, so an alternate would step in at that time during that meeting. It doesn't work that way.
No, not that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, okay, I'll save my other question because it'll get off.
Question, you say it's not that way, but is that, are you making the decision for what we want it to be, or?
No, I'm repeating back what the community discussed in the larger Russell City community meetings that had like 20, 30, 40 people, when we talked about how many people should be on the committee. And we talked about 11, 13, 15. And some people said, well, there should be alternates just in case something happens to those committee members.
But did they define what that alternate position was supposed to do or be? Or did they just say we need 2 alternates and we can define, or the steering committee can define what the alternates can and cannot do?
I never felt it was clear about what the alternate roles were.
Yeah, I'm gonna, let's go to.
Pardon me.
Go ahead.
My hand is raised and we're not following the guidelines that we agreed upon. No, that's okay. But my question was similar. So we were elected and we have new information available, and the information that was provided by Ms. Youngblood does state that our committee is not the same, is not the same as a city committee. So being that we have an alternate who is present, we have a couple members who are not available tonight. As a committee, it is possible for us to discuss, if there's a member who is not present and there is an alternate that is available as a committee, if there is someone who is available to vote as a committee, if we decide that as a collective, there's a vote that needs to be taken and there's an alternate available to vote. If that's something we decide upon as a committee, now that the elected, committee has been seated, and the committee members are present, and if we decide upon that, if it's the will of the committee, then so be it.
Thank you, Aisha. Yeah, I think Regina might have a response to that. And then
yeah, I was gonna pretty much say the same thing that Aisha said. And to be fair, Aisha, your hand color is the same as your background, so I can't I can't see your hand. But I think that that's right, that you all have new information, you can make some changes, but this is where it's important with what we hope we can get to in the next meeting, your communications protocol. So how does that information get back to the larger group that there's been a shift in understanding and updates and roles, et cetera. So I think that it is very possible for you all to make that decision, but then I would encourage you to have a way of communicating that out to the larger group.
Thank you, Regina. Let's go to Michael Johnson.
So just to kind of to clarify for the group, at least what I was thinking when we talked about alternates, once the number of the quorum is decided, whatever that number may be, 7, 8, 9, whatever that is. If the quorum is not met by the elected voting members of the committee, and there are alternates in attendance at that meeting. So say, for example, we said it was 7, and there were only 6 voting members that were actually present. And both of the alternates also there at the meeting. Then one of those alternates will be selected to make sure that we have the quorum so that we can proceed with whatever activity we wanted to proceed to during that meeting, if it includes a vote or not. I also was thinking that an alternate, whether we had all of the voting members in the meeting or not, that those alternates could fully participate in the discussion that's taking place during the meeting. And if there was a vote, then the only thing they wouldn't be doing is voting, but they would still be contributing to the committee's decision-making, thoughts, hearing about direction. Only thing they wouldn't be doing is be voting if there was a quorum that was already met. That was what I thought and how I thought that alternates would or should work.
Thank you, Michael. So you're saying that alternates would participate in conversations, could guide kind of the pros and cons and thinking through things, and they would perhaps vote if a voting member wasn't present?
If a quorum wasn't met.
Wasn't.
Right. So if the quorum was, if the quorum is 7 and there's only 6 voting members there, then an alternate would make up the additional person required to meet the quorum to move business forward.
Yeah. How do you all feel about that? Would you like that to be part of the process? If an alternate is present and there's not enough to make quorum, would the alternate have a voting? A vote.
I agree. I think that would be fair.
Thank you, Tony. Other thoughts? Any thoughts against it? All right, do we have so that means, I'll ask for your thumbs up. That means that if the quorum is 7, well, let's say first we're deciding on the role of the alternates. So if there's not enough voting members to make a quorum and alternate was present, then they could be a part of the vote. Give me a thumbs up if that sounds good for you. Okay. You can give me a thumbs up in the screen, either use the reactions button or use your physical. Thank you, everybody. Okay, so it's established that if voting members, can somebody take note of that, Regina? Yeah, okay. So that means if there's not enough to make quorum, but alternates are there, then they can vote. But what if there's 2 alternates and there's only 1 person who's missing to make up quorum? How do you decide between the 2 alternates who gets to vote that?
Was there a first alternate and the second alternate in the voting?
Oh, okay, good question. Regina, yes? Okay.
Yes, if you go by that, it would be Yvette is the first alternate and Cindy is the second.
Okay, there it is.
I was going to suggest rock, paper, scissors, but
I was too, but that makes more sense. That makes a lot more sense. I imagined that exact same thing.
Yeah, I thought they'd flip a coin. I'm like, oh.
Okay. All
Just
right,
clarification, sorry.
Yeah. Oops. Go ahead, Jenny.
Both of them, I'm looking at the roster, both of them have the same exact number of votes. So is there a reason why we chose?
Alphabet, maybe? Was it?
Oh, no, probably not. I wonder, I thought that there was some differences, probably in decimals. It probably looks like just the same number there, but there's some decimal places. There definitely was a difference, but it's slim.
Yeah, because they both have 33 votes and 54.1%.
33, both have 33? Oh,
Yeah.
I thought that there was a difference between the two. So, okay, so there isn't that clear difference. Are we back to rock, paper, scissors, or flipping a
can
coin?
I don't know who the other alternate is, but we can, yeah, we can. rock,
Cindy
paper, scissors.
Torres, right, yeah.
Is everybody okay with, which one do you prefer, rock, paper, scissors, or?
I'm flipping a coin. I was teasing.
You know what, we can alternate, you know, like you vote this time, you vote next time, you vote this time, you vote next time.
Okay, alternates will alternate voting.
There you go.
Okay, is everybody okay with that?
I think that might get a little,
Go ahead,
that might
Mary.
get a little confusing.
Let's go to Mary and then Gloria.
I have a suggestion. If we assign them certain dates, if we project out the calendar, then on certain dates, one or the other will be the one that's chosen. That might work as well.
So similar to the alternates, but you can identify. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Gloria, did you have your hand up? Was that Gloria earlier? Go ahead, Gloria. Oh, don't forget to unmute.
No, I did not have my.
Oh, okay.
I agree. I don't know about the dates, though. If you set dates for them and then they're absent, I think if we track them voting, you know, alternately.
I'm sure there'll be a way you and Cindy can track it, Yvette. Okay. All right, so with that being said, then quorum, how many should quorum be? 7, 8, or 9 people? Sorry, this was the these were the votes. So 7 people means that there's 4, and to Michael's point earlier, if we require less people, we can move the work forward. Michael?
Yes, a question. Was the purpose of the survey to be the vote, or was just to guide us?
Regina?
The purpose of the survey was to be the vote, but we just want to make sure that everybody is still on board now that they see the scenario, but we don't need to belabor the point because you've answered these questions. But on this particular one, we saw that it was kind of close and wanted to encourage conversation if there were feedback.
Any thoughts? Are you all good to move forward? Aisha?
So, yeah, maybe I'm underthinking this, but now that I have an understanding that this is not similar to the requirements of a city committee, we're spending way too long on this particular item, and I really would like to move on to the next topic of the agenda. So
Okay.
the basis of this item is if the committee is 11 people, a quorum is 7.
Okay.
This is, I'm unless there's something we're missing legally that we need to know, that can protect us. I'm missing something.
No, you're not. We just want to make sure it's good for you all, just to move forward, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Thank you.
All right, we're all good to move forward? Thumbs up? All right, I see enough head nods.
Yeah, let's move forward.
All right, so next discussion then is on committee roles. So what do you think you will be your needs as a committee? So Regina and team put together some potential options with some descriptions, but by far the ones that score the highest, 100% of people said that a chair would be needed as a role, and 80%, a little bit over 80% said vice chair. Michael Lawson, you have your hand up.
Thank you. I'm going to log off. Staff can let me know if they need me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Take
Thank
care.
you, Michael.
Thanks for stopping in.
Thank
Thank you, Michael.
I will be certainly I'll be engaged with everybody as we move forward, and other staff attorneys in my office. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so 12 votes for the chair, that's 100% of people, 10 votes for vice chair, And then 6 votes for a treasurer. There were other roles, but there was 4 responses out of the 12 for those things. So I only listed the highest one. So thoughts about moving forward with these roles, since these were majority of people said that the committee should have these things. Thoughts would be if there's anyone who wants to take the lead on drafting these roles, and then how do you all want to go about selecting who these roles will be? Rebecca. Rebecca? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
So if I recall, I tentatively voted for this. I made some comments about it because I didn't feel like I had enough information. And in terms of, there was a question about what other roles would you like to have? And I just feel like as the process moves along, the need for other types of responsibilities or roles would appear, would avail itself. So I didn't feel like I wanted to close this, this selection process out on the roles, because like I said, there may be some roles that identify themselves, for instance, and not only that, but I'm not really completely sure of all the pieces that the facilitator will carry. I'm not exactly clear. So, once I know exactly what that project manager's roles are, then we'll know what's left, what needs to happen. So I didn't feel like I had enough information to clearly vote or intelligently vote on this piece.
Yeah, I think that's really understandable. Like you all don't know the full scope of the work yet, what it'll entail or require. So you may not know what roles are needed now, but you may later, which I think is, that will be something living and ongoing in terms of discussion. And that makes a good point too. What you said, you may not know what your next facilitator will take on. So maybe even drafting a responsibility sheet for the chair might be a little bit challenging. Yeah.
Maybe this is premature. I don't know.
This is, maybe we don't decide on any of these things now. Maybe you all decide on it later. Anybody have thoughts? Do you want to maybe table this for a later conversation? Maybe when you have more foundation?
I guess I had a question. What would a treasurer do? What money are we going to be dealing with?
Our budget.
Yeah, currently there's the budget associated with the project that was sent out in one of the email communications, I think early this week or maybe late last week. And so just making sure that, okay, if all of the funding that's left isn't used on your facilitator or project manager, there may be another use for those funds, and you all as a committee can decide upon that, but the treasurer would be the one kind of reporting out on, what those funds are being used for and making sure that they were tracked the way that you would want them to be tracked. But these are just suggestions that, as Tiffany said, you may not feel that you need that role at all. What was definitely clear is 100% of the people said that you wanted a chair. And in determining what the roles are, that's totally up to you. And so that's why we said, hey, if there's someone that wants to take a first pass at drafting what the roles might be based on the feedback that you've already given, that you feel like there should be a chair and a vice chair, I would focus on those points of agreement and determining then what you think those roles might be. And you can certainly change them. I don't think that this closes the book on anything. It gives you some place to start, and you can say, oh, okay, that's in the chair's role. Do I want to put that on the facilitator or not? And you can make some adjustments and decisions to change it, because now you have your voting structure and you have your quorum number.
Thank you, Regina. Anybody have thoughts, something that you want to decide on now or push back to later? And if it is something that you think is important now, would anyone want to take the lead on kind of drafting what the responsibilities of at least a chair might be?
I think we should do that together.
Yeah, I think the idea is to have somebody take the lead and then you guys talk about it, right?
Add
Or-
to it.
It's giving you something to react to.
Deborah?
Yeah, I think we just kind of need to do some more research on that before we make a decision.
Okay. So maybe just table it, do some research.
Correct.
I just have a
Let's
question.
go
I'd
to
like,
Yvette. Mhm.
the quicker we get these 3 positions in place, the quicker we can move forward. And this is a question for the team. Is that what they're thinking, or that we have the time to linger on this without getting these positions defined, voted on, and seated, so we can move towards the RFP, excuse me, and other budgetary issues and our mission and all of that? This is a question for the group, or questions for the group.
The steering committee, you mean?
Yeah, for the steering
Okay.
committee.
Okay, thank you, Yvette.
It hasn't been really clear what the mission is, what we're supposed to do. I mean, you know, everybody's talking, but it's not really clear.
Question? Go ahead.
Yvette
I'm
and
sorry.
then Regina.
No, go ahead.
Here's my suggestion, and you can take it for what it's worth. I would think that it'd be helpful for you to have these individuals seated before you bring on a project manager and have the roles defined. That would be my recommendation, because it's just going to make it much easier for you to work with that project manager if you all know your roles and responsibilities. Like right, because right now, you know, even where we are now, individuals are sending individual emails to myself, and then I'm having to send them to Jenny and also Tiffany. You know, you're not all speaking with one voice yet. So we're trying to get you to a place where you're speaking with one voice as a unified steering committee. You may not all agree, but once you've cast your vote for something, then that's the voice that is being spoken. And so being able to direct the work of your hired facilitator is going to be important for you to have roles and defined responsibilities. That'd be my suggestion.
Thank you, Regina. Let's go to Marion.
Thank you, Tiffany. And thank you, Regina. In response to how you are receiving messages from individuals in terms of, at the end of your emails, you ask for us to respond if we have anything to do, any responses to emails that are sent out to the entire group. So those who choose to respond or have suggestions, I think that is why those emails are being received by you. As to Jenny and whoever else needs to be included in those emails that we respond to, because everybody in the group may not want to respond. And if so, that is their charge. They don't have to respond. But those who do choose to respond should be received in the proper fashion and proper tone. So that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Marion. Regina?
So to be clear, I wasn't saying that was a bad thing. That is just the process that we have established right now. And I think that there is a more efficient process that can be established when you have designated roles and responsibilities. I ask you to respond to the emails that I send because I want you to respond to the emails that I send. I was not saying that as a negative, and I hope that you believe that the responses that you've received have been in the right tone.
Thank you, Regina. So it's sounding like this, deciding on these roles could be something that you all pause on, or it might be something that you start to draft, even though it might not be finalized, or maybe it will be evolving over time. But it could also be helpful to seat these positions, so at least you have a point of contact and kind of have some structure or process and guidance moving forward. Aisha.
I'm willing to draft some job descriptions
Love it.
before the next meeting.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to do it with Aisha?
I'll
Or
do it with
Aisha
you.
can just, okay, Yvette and Aisha, thank you.
Thank you.
Would you like to take on drafting how those roles will be elected also, or does somebody else want to take that on?
Tiffany, don't push it, okay? So it's just gonna be basic. This is a Russell City Steering Committee. So I'm gonna facilitate this part of the meeting right now.
Okay,
Yvette and I are going to come up with some draft job descriptions for the chair, vice chair, and treasurer.
all right.
And so we can move this part of the meeting along because it is 7:36 and it's past dinner time and it's cold and this is the second meeting and we're all still asking the same questions. So I'm not going to speak on behalf of the whole group, but we got to keep it moving.
We do. All right, we can ask this question at the second meeting then, or
Yes.
the third meeting.
So
about-
let me just ask the group, what do we want the turnaround time to be for Yvette and I to send something back to the group? Michael V. Johnson, I see your hand.
I'll hold Aisha. I was going to respond to the second question
Okay,
around to take the lead on drafting how the role should be elected. I thought that was actually already decided. It's going to be by simple majority vote of the
Okay.
committee, right? And that should be the end of question 2, right? Unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I don't know if you wanted to nominate people, if they just wanted to self-select and you approve them. That's just all I was asking.
Oh, I got it. Okay, I
Yeah,
misunderstood
yeah.
the question. Okay. I don't know. Back to you, Aisha. Is today is Wednesday. Would by Tuesday of next week be reasonable to have those roles drafted?
sure.
Okay.
Basic
Tuesday.
rules.
Basic.
Yes,
Basic rules, just a quick Google search or something. There you go. Okay. All right, everyone. All right, so we can discuss this part about how they'll be selected in the next meeting if needed. All right, so next topic is the elephants in the room. So there's different thoughts about how we should address this topic. I'll hand it over to Regina next, but we didn't want to skip over it because it was a concern that was brought forward. So at the minimum, we want to acknowledge it. And if you all share that is something that you want to discuss further, we can discuss it here, or if people have thoughts, you can add to it. But if you want to frame this up for us, Regina.
Yes, I do just want to reassure everyone that this was not added to the agenda as attempt to divide or to distract from the work. It was raised as a concern from amongst the larger community about the demographics of the steering committee. And so I did just want to make sure that you had an opportunity amongst yourselves to talk about how you would address a challenge from outside of the community or from the community or, outside of yourself as a steering committee, if somebody spoke about the demographics of the committee. I don't think that there is a desire, at least not on my part, to undo the free and fair and transparent process that was undertaken to bring you all to the steering committee. But I do want you to be prepared, again, as we've talked about from the beginning of this meeting and now we're ending it, to be prepared for any challenges, right? So we want to make sure that you're able to speak to your role as a steering committee member and be able to speak to how you are representing the fullness of the community, right? And that's another part of the conversation for the communications session that is in the next meeting. How are you going to start thinking about answering the question if someone says, how do you know you're speaking for all of Russell City? Are you just speaking for your family? So I just wanted to make that, kind of put it out there. And if anybody wants to discuss it further, then we can. And if you don't, then we don't have to move it any further than that. But I did want to provide that context for why it was there.
Thank you, Regina. Marianne Johnson.
Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Regina. I don't know about everybody else, but this is a community, and I don't see color lines, and that's not something I want to address. I think this should be tabled because it's a distraction. We are here as a community, period.
Thank you, Marianne. Liz?
This is actually kind of difficult for me because, as you know, I'm the only Hispanic on this team. So if you look at Hayward, the majority is, I mean, there is quite a diverse population of Hispanics. And I kind of wish that the research was done or had something to show what that population was actually in Russell City so that we could be apples to apples. Because we try to do that in our council, we try to do that in various committees. And unfortunately, Regina was right. We did do the right thing. We did all the steps. And unfortunately, other cultures or race did not apply or didn't get voted. So it's really hard for me, but I'm going to do my best. But I wish there was more representation, not with just Hispanics and African American, but other people live there too. So just that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you, Liz. Does anybody else would like to share? Gloria? Oh, you're muted, Gloria.
Okay. Yeah, I am really concerned about the ethnic composition of the steering committee. Having grown up in Russell City, having neighbors who were Latino, they were Filipino, they were white. And I think if it were the opposite, if there were, 11 members on a committee and the majority were Latino, I think that we as African Americans would raise some concerns. And understand that we voted, and everything has been so quick, the outreach, just notifying individuals of the steering committee, that we were putting this steering committee together. And I personally am very uncomfortable without having a multicultural representation that is more reflective of the community that I grew up in. Not that we won't represent their wishes fairly, but I do think that there should be a way, and this is only my opinion, to make the steering committee more reflective of Russell City.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I can speak,
Oh,
excuse me,
Tony, sorry,
I'm on my
Tony.
phone, so I can't find the little hand.
It's
I'm
okay,
sorry if
Tony.
I'm stepping out,
No
but
worries.
I
Oh, Tony,
feel,
can I pause for you? I'm gonna go to
Okay.
Rebecca and then we'll go to you, okay?
okay, sure.
Okay.
I wanted to say the same thing. I agree with Gloria and with Liz. I actually was a little bit disappointed when I saw that there was virtually none except for Liz, and I think one of the alternates is a Latino, because I know that during the time when they were forced to move, the community was about roughly 50-50 or something like that, with some change, some small percentage of other ethnicities. So it would be nice. I don't know what could be done at this point, but it would have been really great if there was representation that reflected the community itself. One of the things I heard today when I listened to the state reparations task force is Regina made a statement about the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Regina, that we named this, instead of reparations, we named it restorative because of the fact that there were other races besides just Black in Russell City, and that was intentional to make our task force or our efforts be called reparations or restoration, as opposed to reparations to reflect the fact. So anyway, long story short is I actually agree with Liz and with Gloria. Don't know what to do about it at this point, but my sentiments are certainly there.
Mhm. Thank you, Rebecca. And I think you're right. That's exactly what Regina said, that was an intentional decision to call this a reparative justice project and not restitution. And I mean, I think something to think about, I'm going to go to the next set of hands that are up, but you know, you may not be able to change the composition of the steering committee now, but maybe there's ways you can bring in community members to get their thoughts, or, you know, there might be other ways of including their voices to make sure that they're represented here, even if it's not externally. Let's go to Tony and then Jenny.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, we've done everything but hire a plane and write it across the sky. If the people don't want to be involved, what else can we do? It's not like we're blocking people out. They had an opportunity to be involved as well, but they want to be involved only when it's time to get paid. They want the other people to do their work for them, but now they have their hand out. What else can we do to get people involved? There's nothing else we can do. We've had a picnic. We've had things in the paper. What else can we do? That's all for me.
Yeah, we'll go to Jenny, Deborah, Gloria, and then Yvette.
So I appreciate your guys' feedback and conversation, because even internally, we've gone back and forth with this because we, you know, have different perspectives on it. And so my question is I agree that you guys, there was a process that went through that, you know, people voted and were elected. So what can we do now to better communicate with the other communities that aren't here? I think that should be more, you know, that would be more of my focus on that, is just for, you know, I'm Latina, I've been working, you know, many years in the Bay Area with, you know, multicultural, different communities. And so, yes, we can either take it of, there, you know, there is a risk of like, we don't want it to be divisive. And so, but I also know that there's been more allyship than anything else when I've worked across these communities. I think Russell City is that. So what can we do to ensure that the other communities are communicated with? Because I think if you're doing that, that will go a long way. So basically, like who is this outer group of community members that we're in contact with? And I think that should be more of like the focus of how do we share that information?
Thank you, Jenny. Let's go to Deborah, Gloria, Yvette, and then Aisha.
Yes, that was a concern of mine as well. The only other person on the committee was the alternate, and she was married to my neighbor down the street, the Pachecos. So those are the only two. But I knew a lot of people who were Spanish and different races that lived there. And so I think that part of the problem is a lot of them don't use computers and, you know, voting and all that. And so they just lose all of that contact that's necessary. So I think we are going to have to physically speak with them or whatever, have them be a part of the committee, whether they make the decision or not, but they need to be a part of whatever we do so they'll feel that they are included. I'm done.
Right. Maybe there's, you know, specific outreach instructions that you give to the researchers to call other folks that, you know, may not be here, or as you're preparing the recommendations to reach out to them to get additional thoughts. Let's go to Gloria, Yvette, and then Aisha, and then Michael.
Yeah, I think as the city attorney pointed out, we're going to have many legal challenges to this issue. You know, we already know about the concerned citizens of Hayward, Bruce's Beach, you know, attorney lawsuits against that decision. There were 1,500 people or 1,400 people who lived in Russell City. We have a very low level of participation. We have, I doubt that we've contacted 200 individuals, other than the picnic. But likely not more than 200 participants, people have participated in these activities. And I don't feel that we've done proper outreach so that people are aware. You know, there's a circle of people who communicate with one another, but most of the people that we've outreached to are people that we know. And the Latino population has not been as involved. You know, they did attend the picnic, but I just think that we, you know, make an effort to include, we need to be inclusive. We want to show that we are one within the community, that we've done everything possible to reach them. But I don't think you can say we've done everything possible when we've only reached 200 out of 1,400 people. And maybe that's something that the committee can work on. We can make some kind of decisions. You know, I don't want to maybe even expanding the committee numbers so that we can include other populations, but I'm just very uncomfortable, and we know we're going to have challenges. And we want to say that this steering committee, I want to be able to say that this steering committee represented the entire Russell City community.
Thank you, Gloria. I added on a parking lot, reaching out to other community members of other races and ethnicities to make sure they're included in the process. Yvette and then Aisha.
Okay, quickly. A couple of meetings ago, I think Ms. Youngblood said we have a list of volunteers where she's been approached by several people who would like to assist with this. Maybe we could look at that list and ensure that it's very inclusive. And when reviewing it and selecting, that we are aware, very conscious of the cultural balance that we need in our selection from that volunteer list. I'm just throwing that out. Maybe that's something that we could do.
Just to be clear, so I've been reached out to from the First Presbyterian Church. Their entire congregation is motivated by anti-racism, and they would like to assist in some way. And one other individual, not diverse at all, and I don't know what the diversity is of the congregation, but definitely the second person is not diverse at all. But she's like, I love taking notes. I can take notes for people, but I can get you all that information when you're ready to move forward.
Okay. And maybe we can get together and find out some other organizations that exist that other cultures are a part of, and approach them and ask them if they would like to volunteer to include them in the process. Just a thought.
Thank you, Yvette. Yeah, maybe we can use the volunteers to help with this outreach process. Aisha, and then if you still have your hand up, and then Michael.
I was just going to speak to a couple of things. The time of these meetings is difficult for folks who may be descendants or used to have lived in Russell City. For the Russell City reunion picnic meetings, we had them during the day, which seemed to work for a different generation of folks. Zoom is difficult for people. You know, and also this is still a relatively new process. You know, there's just still folks after the amount of time that has passed, are not necessarily trusting of government, but they are trusting of folks that they know from Russell City, right? So, you know, Sam Nava declined the nomination to this committee, but people still listen to him. And so it will take time for, us to, for members of this committee to be able to reach out to those that we know, to relay information. And so I just wanted to mention that. And then also, just the technology and our ability to be able to share information that is printed and send it to those who have attended the picnic, to kind of connect people via another manner that they are accustomed to, I think is also would be of value.
Yeah, absolutely. Diversifying outreach methods and also time and accessibility for getting those thoughts in. Thank you, Aisha. Michael, if you still have your hand up.
No, I think that everybody has spoke well and made their voices heard. So
Okay,
I have nothing to add.
thank you, Michael. All right, everybody. So that was the last item. Oh, I lied. The last item was the next steps. So in terms of next meeting goals, what would you all like to discuss in the next meeting? So I know a priority of that Regina had set forward was deciding how communications or updates or decisions that you all make as a steering committee will be communicated out to a larger Russell City Steering Committee. Off the top of your heads right now, are there other things that you would want to address in the next meeting? Or this could be something we send out via email. Rebecca?
This is a little different than what you're asking. I'm sorry. I just have a question. Do you plan to send notes from our meetings, or is the purpose of having it recorded for us to review the recording? How does that, one of the things that you plan to do, or is that something that?
Not myself. No, I don't plan to send follow-up notes. Regina, okay. Unless you have something different.
Is that something that I guess we'll decide on as a committee, is if that's part of the role of one of the designated leaders?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Deborah?
Whatever we want to discuss at the next meeting, can we send an email? Let us think about it.
All right, will do. And I'll also let you think about the next meeting dates. We'll send out some options. All right, it sounds like you all ready for the rest of your evening. So thank you, everybody. Much was discussed and decided on today. Ayana?
Can we at least acknowledge a window in conversation about when the next meeting will be held with the holidays? Right. Yes. And so if there are suggestions and folks are out of town or have other obligations, I'd like to at least have that discussion now and then be able to have those options be available digitally.
Yeah, I know the
after
city
New Year's.
It's definitely going to be after New Year's.
Yeah,
I know the city is closing and our offices are closing too. So I think sometime in January, mid-January, late January. And we can send out some polls for those dates. But it sounds like for the committee, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. is the best for most people. All right, everybody. So we have decided on some of the preliminary roles on your committee, what the voting protocol will be, majority vote, what the quorum is in terms of 7, that alternates will take the place of members if they're not there in order to vote, and the alternates will alternate in order to step in to meet quorum. So that was everything in our agenda. Thank you all for your feedback in drafting the agenda and helping us to scale it back. We'll send out some follow-up questions about what to discuss next and what our next meeting will be. Thank you all so much, and
thank you.
have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you, everybody.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Good night.
Happy holidays. Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Great productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Aisha and Yvette, for taking on the drafting of the roles.
Yes, thank you,
Gonna be
Aisha,
basic.
Yvette. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Take good care.
Ooh.